Tell me when I can start Brahmara.
Yes, Nana. Inka 1 minute undi.
Okay.
You can unmute yourself. Dr. Renu has a question that she has. Maybe you'd like to answer it after you start, so that.
Okay. Yeah, I knew she was saying something.
Mm.
I missed it. Yeah, we will attend to that. No problem.
Yeah. You can start, Nana.
Brahmanandam Paramasukhadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gaganasudrusham Tattvamasyadilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadhi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami Shruti Smruti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavad Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashya Krutau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Vande Guru Paramparam Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Chaiva Tato Jayamudirayet. Yes, Brahmara. Dr. Renu's question. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Nana. Dr. Renu had a question there.
Yes.
Do you want to take this first before we start?
Yeah.
Yeah. She says, when I say Aham Brahmasmi, it brings a sense of ego that I am Brahma.
No, not really. No, you sincerely are conforming to the Shastra Vakya. That ego does not come in. That egotism does not come in. Ego is there. Egotism is not there. You are having enough Shraddha in the Shastra Vakya, and you keep on repeating Aham Brahmasmi, and it is going to have a salutary effect on your manobhavana hereafter. It is going to be helpful for you. You will all the time realize that you are everywhere. I am Aham Sarvagataha and Aham Sarvavyapi and Sarvasakshi. When all these things are the attributes of the Swarupa of Brahma, and you are claiming Aham Brahmasmi, then you tend to wade yourself into those kind of paths. Egotism does not come in. Again, it depends on the attitude with which you say that. Yeah, it is. It is all-pervading consciousness. Sarvam Brahmamayam Jagat, of which you are also a part. And you are claiming You are Brahma. When you are claiming you are the Brahma, that means Sarvam Brahmamayam Jagat. That means Sarvam Ahamayam. Ahammayam. I am pervading the entire Jagat will be the Bhavana. And that will give you a lot of scope for the universal love. It's not a simple mere living that matters. It is a universal loving that matters. So that you will be able to cultivate in yourself. Yeah. Now you can start Brahmara. Involvement of Atma with the body is only because of ignorance.
Yes.
Now 7:05. You are going up to 7:55.
Okay.
50 minutes are yours.
Okay. Hari Om. The involvement of Atma with the body is only because of ignorance. How does this happen? By false identification alone. The Atma is absolutely uninvolved in anything. It is purely in the form of consciousness and cannot get involved with anything because it does not have any features. Water can join milk because both have certain properties. But if there is one thing with no property at all and another thing that has a form, a property, how can both of them join? It is something like putting some bolts and rivets on space. How will you do that? Similarly, how can the Atma, which is featureless consciousness, get involved with a body which is so tangible? This can only happen through a false notion. Mithya pratyaya. That will accomplish everything. It can turn a rope into a snake. It can even turn the conscious into the inert. The I, having the status of being connected to the body, mind, and senses, is all because of mithya pratyaya. How do we know when that mithya pratyaya is not present? There is no false I sense in any of these. And when it is present, those notions are there. In sleep, for instance, there is no false cognition because there is no cognition at all. Even in waking, there is no false notion of being the body, etc., at a moment when you are happy. Because in a moment of happiness, there is total resolution of the mithya pratyaya for the time being, and therefore no identification with the body, mind, sense complex. Also, when there is knowledge of the self, there is no mistake of this kind. Therefore, the jnani does not have an identification with the body, mind, sense complex. Thus, we see that when one is there, the other is there. One is not there, the other is not there. Therefore, the presence of one accounts for the presence of the other. When there is a false notion, mithya pratyaya of Atma, the Atma is identified with the body, mind, sense complex. And when there is no mithya pratyaya, Atma is not identified with the body, mind, sense complex. Shankara explains it further. When there is ignorance, those who have no discrimination are seen to have the I sense in the body, mind, sense complex. It is experienced as notions such as, I am tall, I am fair. Under the spell of ignorance, naturally, there is lack of discrimination. For those who have discrimination, however, this problem of false identification with the body is not there because they have the knowledge, I am distinct from the body, mind, etc. Previously, they also had the same problem, which is why they became mumukshus and began studying the Shastra. After the study, the I sense will not be there as it was before. Though it may be there, it is not as before because it is negated, bhadita. If the self is already known and still there is an I sense in the body, mind, etc., that is an entirely different thing. The Atma cannot be taken as the body, mind, sense complex any longer. There, a figurative I sense, a Gauna Pratyaya is possible. Because both are known, the Jnani can say without any error, I am putting on weight. He means only that the physical body is gaining weight. It is distinctly seen by him. And the fact that Atma is Satchidananda is also very clear to him. Therefore, when the Jnani says that he is getting fat, he means only that the body is getting fat, nothing else. His I sense is not in the body, mind, etc. Therefore, we can say that when this false notion is not there, the body, mind, sense complex is not taken for the Atma. That identification is created by a false notion. It is not figurative, Gauna. The common and uncommon features are clear in a Gauna Pratyaya, but not in Mithya Pratyaya. In a Gauna Pratyaya, the particular and the general attributes, the difference and the similarity are separately understood. It is very well known, for instance, that Devadatta is a human being, not a lion. When we say that Devadatta is a lion, we are not pointing out a lion, but a human being. You recognize Devadatta as a human being, and you also recognize the lion as a lion. At the same time, there is a feature which is common to both, namely fierceness. In Devadatta, you see a fierceness that is also seen in a lion. When I say that he is a lion, you do not go behind him to find out whether he has a tail or not, or look for a mane. You look for some other feature that resembles a certain quality of the lion. The particular feature of courage or fierceness of the lion is found in the person. It is seen in both Devadatta and the lion. Then alone can you say that Devadatta is a lion. When we say that the student is fire, we understand what is fire and what is a student. There is no confusion there. Both are known very clearly. The distinguishing feature, color that is common to both is also very clear. Similarly, when we say that someone is a black sheep, nobody thinks that he is either black or a sheep. We know very well that he is a human being. These are all figurative expressions, Gauna Pratyayas. Both the difference between the two and the feature that is common to both are very clearly known. If these are not clearly known, we cannot say it is a Gauna Pratyaya, a figurative expression. It is rather a false notion, Mithya Pratyaya. If there is no clear understanding of the body and the Atma as two distinct things, it is an error, Mithya Pratyaya. In other words, you must understand the two things as two things, Anatma as Anatma and Atma as Atma. We are not talking about the ontological status of Atma and Anatma here. We are only seeing the distinction between the two. If you ask me what the relationship is between Atma and the Anatma in terms of reality, I would say that they are not two different things, like table and chair. The table can be there without chair, and the chair can be there without table. Here, however, though Atma can be there without Anatma, the Anatma does not exist without Atma. That is the ontological relationship. What is ontological, Nana?
It's a philosophical term that says, in reality, what is the relationship, ontological relationship. Like the clear example given is, without Atma, there is no Anatma. Without Atma, even your body is not. Whereas your body is not. Atma is all the time there. It's a philosophical connotation to identify what is the tattva, what is the truth.
Okay. So that is the ontological relationship between Atma and Anatma. Now, however, we are talking purely on the properties of Atma and Anatma. If
Another
Atma,
thing, Hari Om Brahman, another thing is, whatever is dependent on another, that becomes what? Like Maya is dependent on Brahma. Brahmashraya Maya. It's not that Maya Shraya Brahma. Whether Maya is there or not, Brahma is. When Brahma is only, Maya is. The relative dependence also will highlight that ontological relationship.
okay.
You
So that
are
means,
and your body is. That you means Atma is and the body is. The mind senses are. Whether they are there or not, you are all the time. Because you are Sarvagataha, number one. Number two, you are the Sadvastu. You are always there. You are not time bound. You are not place bound. So you are the Sadvastu, and that cannot be negated. It is Abhadita Satyam. Yeah.
it is like the wave is because the ocean is. The ocean is in spite of the wave being there or not there. That is the ontological relationship between Atma and Anatma. Now, however, we are talking purely of the properties of Atma and Anatma. If Atma is understood and the properties of Anatma are understood to belong to Anatma, there is no problem. Then if one says, I am fat, it can be gauna, figurative. But if it is not understood, it is a mithya pratyaya, a false notion, like the rope being mistaken for a snake. That is not gauna, because you are jumping for the snake, not for the rope. Purva Pakshi. If Atma is not a karta, the Shruti will lose its validity as a pramana, Purva Pakshi's objection. So, Nana, the previous paragraph can be, the gist can be that for a jnani, for an ajnani, the Atma Anatma relationship is a mithya pratyaya, whereas for a jnani, it is a gauna pratyaya.
Very right.
Right?
For you and I, yeah, very right. You, supposing you say, I am not well. That is not a gauna prachaya, because you and I are still ajnanis. An ajnani saying, I am not well, that is a mithya prachaya. That I, the Atma, is equated to the body, and that equation is mithya. It is not gauna. Whereas a jnani saying that it is gauna, he knows clearly that he is other than the body, and the body is like his domesticated animal, like a dog. The body is like him like a dog for him. Like he takes care of the dog, like you and I take care of the dog. He takes care of the body. Something happened to the body, he does not think and get disillusioned that he has got that kind of a problem. No.
So the jnani will not have any mithya when they achieve it, right? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Because he has understood what
Yeah.
is the reality, what is the tattva.
Right.
In reality, what he is, he has understood. So
Okay.
he is beyond the effects of mithya, but he understands mithya.
Okay.
He understands mithya in the sense, like you and I, he sees the jagat. You and I see the jagat as real. He sees the jagat as mithya. But still, he will grant that in the jagat there are things to be understood, there are things to be happy about, like the breeze, a cool breeze, the hot sun in wintry cold. All these things are appreciably noticed by even the jnani, but he knows they're all
Yeah.
mithya.
Mithya. Mhm.
That's the difference.
Okay. Thank you.
Hmm. Forward.
If Atma is not a karta, the Shruti will lose its validity as a pramana. Purva Pakshi's objection. Now, Shankara considers the argument presented earlier by the Purva Mimamsaka that if Atma is not an agent, karta, the Shruti will lose its status as a means of knowledge, pramana. Because in its injunctions, it is addressing a karta. This is a presumption, arthapatti. How? When the Shruti says, if you want this, do this action. If you want to avoid pain, do not do this. It is addressing someone who does an action, a karta. If Atma were a karta, the Shruti would not ask it to do various things. Nobody tells a bald-headed person to tie his hair properly. And nobody says to a human being, polish your horn. Similarly, the Shruti cannot tell me, do this if I am not a karta in the vision of the Shruti. So it is presumed that the Atma is viewed by the Shruti as a karta. Shankara's answer. Veda is a pramana only with reference to unseen things. Shankara says that this is not true. The Shruti has the status of being a means of knowledge only with reference to things that cannot be known by any other means of knowledge and are therefore unseen, adrishta. It can serve as a means of knowledge for things that cannot be known by perception, etc., like the means and ends, sadhana sadhya, such as the Agnihotra ritual and heaven. But it does not have the status of being a means of knowledge, pramana, for things that can be known by perception, etc., for its scope is in what is not known by these means. Without any exposure to the Shruti and before any exposure to the Shruti, do not people have the sense, I am doing, I am seeing, I am happy, I am unhappy, etc.? From this, it is clear that you do not need Shruti to tell you whether you are a karta or not. It is very well known to you through your experiences of seeing, etc. You need only yourself, not Shruti, to determine that you are a doer. Definition of a pramana. A pramana, means of knowledge, has its access only with reference to things that are not known. Anadi gata. But what is brought to light can be right or wrong, because the snake is also brought to light. Thus, we cannot say that anything that a pramana, as it has been so far defined, brings to light is valid, because the same eyes that make me see the rope also make me jump for a snake which is not there. Therefore, we have to add one more word to the definition of pramana. It not only brings to light what was not previously known, anadigata, but what it reveals must be abhadita, not negatable.
Hari Om. The word reads not anadhigata, anadhigata.
Anadhigata.
Adhigata is that which is known. Anadhigata is what is not known. Anadhigata.
Anadhigata.
Ah, yeah.
So it not only brings to light what was not known previously, anadhigata, gata, but what it reveals must be abadita, not negatable. We cannot say that anything that the sense organs or any reasoning bring to light need always be valid knowledge, prama, because there can always be an error, prama. To cover this possibility, we have to say that pramana is that which is capable of producing knowledge of an object which is not so far known, and that knowledge cannot be negated later. What it reveals cannot be arrived at by perception, pratyaksha, inference, anumana, presumption, arthapatti, comparison, upamana, or the means for the cognition of non-existence, anupalabdhi.
I suppose all of you know all these terms. The pratyaksha, anumana, ardhapatti, upamana, and anupalabdhi. If you have any doubt, I will explain. Pratyaksha is what is directly available to the sense organs or the mind. Like, I see you, and that is pratyaksha. I hear you, that is pratyaksha. Okay? Inference is anumana. That is, in the yonder mountains, there is some smoke that is issuing out from the mountain, but you do not see any fire. But your anubhava is what? Whenever there is smoke, the cause for the smoke must be fire. Fire which has been burning something very moist. So you come to the conclusion that there is fire there, where you have seen the dhumaha, where you have seen the smoke. Yatra yatra dhumaha, tatra tatra vannihi. Wherever there is smoke, there ought to be fire. Okay? That is anumana. Presumption is ardhapatti. This word was used earlier also in the earlier para. Ardhapatti is supposing somebody says, Mr. X does not eat during the day at all. And it is a known fact that Mr. X is putting on weight. So what is the ardhapatti? What is the ardhapatti? You come to the conclusion that this fellow, Mr. X, is eating very heavily at night, not only compensating for what he is missing during the day, he is eating in excess of what is required at night. That is how he is putting on weight. That is the ardhapatti. Okay, all these are based on your anubhava and yukti, your logic. Comparison is upamana. Like Devadatta is a lion. That is an upamana. He is like a lion in courage and that fierceness. That upamana is that. Anupalabdhi. Anupalabdhi is what? Upalabdhi is what? That which is available. Anupalabdhi is what? Like when you see me or I see you, I have definite knowledge that you do not have horns. Like even the cow or anything like that. Like an animal, you don't have horns. That anupalabdhi, definite knowledge that you do not have horns, is anupalabdhi. Another thing is when we two meet and we have shaken hands, and afterwards you say tata bye bye. Then I will say, hey, look at my palm, look at my hand. And what do you look at? You look at my palm only. What is there in the palm? I say there is an apple in the palm, but you see no apple. You know definitely, hey, don't be kidding. There is no apple at all in your palm. That apple is anupalabdhi. It is not available, the palm. That knowledge that something is not there definitely is another kind of perception, anupalabdhi. Okay? Yeah, forward.
Can we give the example of the snake on the rope as Anupalabdhi?
No. That is mithya. That is mithya prachaya. Snake on the rope is mithya prachaya.
Yeah.
You
Here it
see,
is not, the rope itself is not there.
not exactly. If the rope were not there, you wouldn't have seen a snake at all, right? Or
Got it.
forget about the rope, a stick, supposing a kind of a wavy stick. In that stick, you have seen a rope, a snake. If the stick were not there, which is the pradhana vastu, mukhya vastu, your superimposition of the snake on that stick will not be there. That mithya pratyaya is not possible.
Correct.
Okay?
Yeah. Got it, Nana.
Yeah.
Here, can we give this example of the rising sun? We see the sun with our eyes. We see that it arises from the east and goes to the west.
Yeah.
That is the pratyaksha pramana.
But it can be defective.
So
That kind of a pramana, like what Acharya said, any prama, your eyes are seeing, that prama. Prama is a means of knowledge. It can be because of Brahma. You really don't know. If you have not known the earth is moving on its axis, earth is moving on its axis from east to west, you will always consider that sun is rising in the east and setting in the west, which is not the case. That has been the input to you through the sense organs and the mind, which is a Brahma Janitam, Mithya Prachaya.
right.
Okay?
Okay.
Right.
So what it reveals cannot be arrived at by perception. Pratyaksha, inference, anumana, presumption, arthapatti, comparison, upamana, or the means for the cognition of non-existence, anupalabdhi, and therefore it is an independent means of knowledge. What is revealed by Shruti is neither revealed nor negated by other pramanas. It has to talk about something that cannot be known by any of these means. Then again, it cannot be contradicted by any other pramana because no other pramana has access to its subject matter. If it can be contradicted, then it is dealing with an object that is available for other means of knowledge. When the Shruti says that there is a heaven, how can we contradict it? We cannot argue that there is no heaven because we do not see one. That is why we need the Shruti to say that there is one, because we do not see. If we could, Shruti need not say that. That is why Shruti does not tell us that there is Antarctica. It knows that we can see that fact by ourselves. Therefore, Shruti must talk about something which cannot be otherwise known. It can talk about heaven as an end, sadhya, and also the means, sadhana, for attaining that, the Jyotishtoma. Without the Shruti, we neither know that there is a heaven, nor an Jyotishtoma ritual, nor the connection between the two, that one is the end and the other is the means for it. I am a karta is a natural conclusion born of ignorance. We do not need Shruti to reveal it. The validity of the Shruti is only with reference to things like these, not what is experienced by perception, etc. Therefore, Shruti does not have to establish that you are a karta. If it has to establish something with reference to Atma, then it is the fact that Atma is not a karta. It does not have the status of being a means of knowledge, pramana, for things that can be known by perception, etc., because its pramanya is in things that cannot be known by these other means, adrishta. Therefore, the Shruti need not come and tell you that you are a karta. It is seen
This
by you.
pramanya means, Brahmara, the
Yes, sir.
pramanya means the usefulness of the pramana. Okay?
Okay.
The validity and usefulness of the pramana is pramanya. Yeah.
So therefore the Shruti need not come and tell you that you are a karta. It is seen, drishta by you. It is your own experience. Therefore, it is not possible to imagine an I sense in the body-mind sense complex being secondary. It is caused by a false notion, mithya pratyaya, and cannot be imagined to be figurative, gauna. If the Shruti were to contradict other pramanas, it is not acceptable. Shankara says here that even if
This must be understood very clearly. This is where I said that Shruti, Yukti, Anubhava, it must be always the three guiding factors in your life. If what the Shruti apparently is saying is against your other Anubhava and your logical mind, then either the Shruti Vakya is perhaps distorted by some interpolation by somebody, or the implied meaning of the Shruti Vakya could be entirely different, which you have not yet known. You must try to find out what it is. Like in the Tattva Bodha, we have seen what is the definition of Ishvara, what is the definition of Jiva, Alpajnaha, Kinchignaha, Jivaha, and Sarvajnaha, Sarvagataha, Ishvaraha. Because of the Upadhi Bheda. If you remove the Upadhi, if you consider only the consciousness, Diveshwaryoho Abheda Buddhi Eva, that is what the implied meaning must be considered. Yeah, forward.
If the Shruti were to contradict other pramanas, it is not acceptable. Shankara says here that even if 100 Shruti passages were to say that fire is cold and non-luminous, they would not gain the status of being a pramana. They would not be valid. Why? No means of knowledge can contradict what can be known by another means of knowledge. No Shruti can contradict what can be known by perception, etc. No scripture in the world can say anything against common sense and be considered valid. If it says that God sitting in heaven created the world, it is wrong because it is against all logic. Anything illogical has to be taken as illogical and dismissed. Just because some authority says it, it does not become valid. Therefore, Shankara says that even if the Shruti says that fire is cold, it will not be considered valid. Then he qualifies this statement. If what the Shruti says seems contradictory, we should look into the intended meaning. If such a Shruti statement is there, we should look into it to see if the Shruti intended some other meaning. That is what we call Shraddha. If we find that the Shruti is making a statement which seems to contradict another pramana or what Shruti itself has said elsewhere, then we look into the Shruti again and see whether there is any other meaning in keeping with what is said before and what it says later. We try to understand what the Shruti says. After all, in many statements, even in our day-to-day interactions, we have to go behind the sentence to see the intended meaning because the words themselves are sometimes not adequate. People are brief in communicating or sometimes even incapable of communicating because they do not have sufficient words to express themselves. There is an intention in everybody's statement, and that intention you have to see to get the meaning of the statement. Mere words themselves sometimes do not convey, and therefore you have to see the intended meaning. Thus, Shankara concludes that if there is any such statement in the Shruti, you have to look into it again. Why? Because if it makes such contradictory statements, then Shruti itself cannot be a pramana. The Shruti cannot have the status of being the means of knowledge and at the same time make contradictory statements. Which statement would we take as true, which as not true? No pramana can contradict another pramana. This includes Shruti. It cannot contradict itself. For example, in one place, the Shruti asks you to do karma. Then later in Vedanta, it says immortality is gained not by karma or progeny or wealth, but by renouncing all these. Na karmana, na prajaya, dhanena, tyagena. Is there a contradiction? No, because it does not say that you will gain moksha by karma. There is no contradiction because there are two different topics. One is karma, the other is knowledge, jnana. Therefore, we have to understand what the Shruti says. And if there is any statement which is contradictory to other pramanas, we have to look into the Shruti again. We cannot accept that it is a means of knowledge for some things and not for others. It is like having half an egg for hatching and the other half for an omelette. Similarly,
This expression, this expression was for the first time used by who? Shankaracharya's Paramaguru, Shri Gaudapadacharya. In his Mandukya Karika, he has used this expression. If you say, this is possible, that is also possible, it is like having an egg, half of which is used for hatching, and the other half you make a breakfast item like an omelette. He uses that in the Mandukya Karika. Okay.
Here, this half for hatching and half for omelette, with respect to Shruti, is that Shruti asks you to do karma, and Shruti also asks you to follow jnana. Is that the thing?
No, not simply follow jnana. Karma tyaga.
Karma
Na karmana. Tyage naike means what? The tyaga includes karma also. That's it.
Right.
That is the implied meaning. What the intention of the Shruti must be understood. Why did Shruti in the Karma Kanda say Karma Kuru? Why did it say? Because it was addressing who? Was it addressing at that time a jnani or an ajnani?
Ajnani.
Ajnani. So ajnani will have to evolve and evolve through karma anushtana in the karma yoga bhavana. That is the implied meaning. Yeah, forward.
Similarly, we cannot accept half the Shruti or certain portions of the Shruti as valid and other parts as not valid. We have to accept it totally. The fact that one is a karta is known to all. Shruti need not and does not reveal this. It only reveals that which is not known to you. Acceptance of self-ignorance does not make the Shruti lose its validity. If the karta is mithya, Shruti would lose its validity. Purva Pakshi's objection. Another objection is raised here. Any karma requires a karta, without whom there can be no karma. Thus, the various rituals that are enjoined by the Shruti imply a karta. If this karta does not exist, because it is created by a false notion, mithya pratyaya, then the Shruti has no pramanya. Shankara has said that to be a doer, there must be a false notion, mithya pratyaya. The Atma should be seen as a doer, as the body does the action. Even though one sees very clearly the action emanating from the mind, sense organs, and organs of action, and is aware that he is using all of them at the same time, there is the notion, I perform the action. That notion is clearly false, mithya pratyaya, because the one who is conscious of all those instruments performing the action does not perform any action. It is like a light saying, I am reading, when it illumines the book that you are reading. It does not do any action, not even illumining, because its nature is light. In that, the objects get illumined. This is such a beautiful example.
There's no intention on the part of light to illumine. It helplessly illumines because that is its swarupa. Like even the sun. It's not the intention of sun to get rid of darkness, but it happens, that is his swarupa. The revelation of objects which were as though not visible during darkness, Arunenaiva bodhena purvam santamase hrute tata avirbhavedatma swayameva amshumaniva, like that. When that happens, knowledge happens, takes place. That is what the Shruti says. Helplessly, you will be a jnani. That's it.
That's nice. Helplessly.
Very right. But it requires your prayatnam. Arunenaiva bodhena purvam samtamase hrute. Before even the sun was seen by you, because of the Arunakanti, before even the sun rise, and you have not seen the pratibimba of the sun, the darkness has as though vanished. That is what happens to us, I believe, when the mind keeps on evolving, etc. Shraddhavan labhate jnanam, that it what it means. Yes, madam.
Yes, similarly, the nature of Atma is consciousness, Chaitanya. And in that consciousness alone, the knower, known, and instrument of knowledge all shine. All of them have their being in that consciousness, and all of them shine after that consciousness. Therefore, it is clear that Atma does not perform any action. But then, if you take the Atma as a doer, karta, that karta is false. It is created by an erroneous notion. Since the karta is false, the opponent argues here that this amounts to saying that the karta is not there. If the karta is not there, then the whole Veda, which talks about doing various rituals, becomes invalid. There is an apramanatva for the Veda because it is addressing an Atma which is not a karta. It is something like asking a person who is lame to ride a bike. Similarly here, there is no karta at all, yet the Veda says, perform action. Therefore, in order to make the Veda valid, that is to restore pramanatva to the Veda, you must make the Atma a karta. This is the idea the opponent wants to express. It is still a pramana with reference to Brahma Vidya, Vedanti's reply. Shankara dismisses this. While it is true that the Veda may not be a pramana with reference to karma if there is no karta, it is still tenable for it to have the status of being a pramana for the knowledge of Brahman. The karta is naturally established, svabhava siddha. No pramana is necessary for that. Everybody has the sense, I am the karta. Knowing that, the Veda addresses that person. Do this karma, avoid that karma, and so on. If the person gets a little serious and wants to know something more, then the Veda says, you are not the karta. All the time it says, do this, do that. Then, when I begin to question why I should do all this karma for things I'm not interested in, because what I want is moksha, it says, okay, then you have to know yourself as a karta. There, the Veda is definitely a pramana. When the karta is there, the Veda is a pramana. And even when the karta is not there, it is still a pramana. If the karma kanda is not valid, then the jnana kanda is also not valid. Purva Pakshi's objection. Now another objection is raised, assuming that the Shruti which enjoins karma loses its status as a pramana if the karta is proved to be false. If the Shruti that enjoins karma is not a means of knowledge, likewise, the Shruti that teaches the knowledge of Brahman has no pramanya. The portion of the Veda dealing with the reality of Atma is not valid for the one who looks upon himself as a karta. He has no interest in pursuing that part of the Veda, the Jnana Kanda. Similarly, the one who looks upon himself as a non-doer, akarta, has no attraction towards the part of the Veda that enjoins action, karma kanda. Just as the injunctions for karma are not valid for the one who knows that he is not a doer, so too, the things that are enjoined for the one who wants to know Brahman are not valid and hold no interest for the one who is convinced that he is a doer. When the Shruti says that the self is to be seen, listened about, analyzed, and contemplated upon Atma va are drashtavyaha, shrotavyaha, mantavyaha, nidityasitavyaha. The person who is committed to being a doer has no interest in this pursuit. One cancels the other, like the dream and waking. The waking is cancelled in the dream, and the dream is cancelled in the waking. Which Atma is more real? The dreamer and waker both cancel each other. Here too, the Jnana Kanda is cancelled by the Karma Kanda, and the Karma Kanda is cancelled by the Jnana Kanda. The pursuit of karma is possible only when you look upon the Atma as a karta. And in the pursuit of knowledge, you should look upon the Atma as a karta. Therefore, if the Shruti which enjoins karma is not a pramana, neither is the Shruti which teaches knowledge of Brahman. When a person understands that what he took to be a snake is really a rope, the snake goes away. And again, just as the snake goes away, the rope also may go away. Where is the guarantee that the rope is real? This is his problem. This is the Purva Pakshi's problem. While the Karma Kanda can be negated by the Jnana Kanda, there is nothing to negate what the Jnana Kanda says, Vedanti's reply. The snake goes away, but the knowledge of the rope will not go away if it is Satya. While what is negated is Mithya, and what is not negated is Satya. Similarly, Atma being a Karta is Mithya, while Atma being a Karta is Satya. Both do not enjoy the same status because Atma being a Karta is not revealed by the Shastra. The Karta is addressed by the Shastra, but the Shastra does not serve as a means of knowledge in establishing that Atma is a Karta.
This difference must be understood.
This,
Shastra
you
has
explain
never tried to establish Atma as a Karta. But the Karma Kanda of the Veda has been addressing a Karta, yes. Karta means what? An Ajnani. It has been addressing a Karta, but it has not tried to establish that Atma is a Karta. Automatically, Ajnani Shastra knows, thinks he is a Karta. Though it is a Mithya Prachaya, Shastra grants that and makes all kinds of injunctions to enable him realize his Akarta nature. and that will be revealed during the Jnana Kanda. In the Karma Kanda, at no place did Shastra make it its own burden to prove that Atma is a Karta. It knows, you fellow, you think you are a Karta, so go ahead. Keep on reducing your Nirmalya, your Mala, you keep on reducing. You will know that you are an Akarta later. That is the burden of the Shastra. Yeah.
Yeah. Similarly, Atma being a Karta is Mithya, while Atma being a Karta is Satya. Both do not enjoy the same status because Atma being a Karta is not revealed by the Shastra. The Karta is addressed by the Shastra, but the Shastra does not serve as a means of knowledge in establishing that Atma is a Karta. Its Pramanya is, in that context, is only in giving some means and ends that are not otherwise known to us. You do not require Shastra to reveal that you are the Karta, because everybody knows I am the doer, I am the enjoyer, I am unhappy, I am happy, I am samsari, etc. Even a dog knows that. When a dog is eating, it does not feel that somebody else is eating. When it wants to wag the tail, it does not wag some other tail, but only its own. That is called a sense of agency, kartritva buddhi. And every individual has it. The Shastra need not reveal that you are a karta. It does say, however, that any karma you do produces a result that is not seen, adrishta. Thus, the Shastra reveals punya and papa. Then, the Shastra also reveals that if you do this karma, you will get this result. I do not know what the Jyotishtoma ritual is, nor that if I do it, I will go to heaven, nor that there is a heaven, nor that I will survive death. This is all beyond my perception and inference, and therefore the Shastra serves as the means of knowledge in revealing it, but not in establishing the Karta. Finally, the Shastra reveals that Atma is not a Karta. It does not perform any action. It is Brahman. That knowledge negates any sense of agency, kartritva, or enjoyership, bhoktritva. In other words, samsaritva. It points out the real nature, swarupa of the karta. Finally, negating the sense of doership, kartritva buddhi. Now the question is, just as the kartritva buddhi is negated by akartritva buddhi, perhaps the akartritva buddhi can also be negated by kartritva buddhi. It's a tricky question. Correct?
Yeah. No. This is called wool gathering. Simply because you got a mind which can raise a question, you keep on raising questions which have no basis. Logically, the question itself is fallacious. Because this happens, that also may happen. This is called wool gathering. Yeah, go forward.
Perhaps the akartritva buddhi can also be negated by kartritva buddhi. Shankara says, no, it cannot be negated. Why? Once the kartritva buddhi is negated and Atma is discovered to be akarta, the kartritva buddhi cannot arise in the same place because being akarta is the truth of Atma. It is Satya. And in the discovery of that, the false notion, mithya pratyaya, that Atma is a karta goes away. Once it has been removed by knowledge, how can that false notion come again? Whenever there is ignorance, it is not mandatory that there should be a false cognition, as in sleep, or when something is totally unknown. But whenever there is a false cognition, there is always ignorance. If that ignorance is gone, there is no possibility of a false cognition occurring. In the wake of knowledge, ignorance goes away, and therefore a false notion arising from it cannot come back. We cannot negate what is real, Satya, by only what is false, mithya. If the real Atma can also be negated, then what is Satya? The Atma that can be negated becomes mithya, because only that which is not subject to negation can be called Satya. Shankara explains further. Once you have knowledge that fire is hot and brilliant, can it be negated? But suppose you think that fire is always covered by ashes. Is that true? No, it is a false notion, and it can be negated by the knowledge that fire is hot and brilliant, a knowledge that cannot subsequently be negated. Similarly, the ideas that the sun rises in the eastern sky or that the earth is flat are false notions, and though they were once held as true, they were later negated. Now here, can you say that the recognition of Atma as Akarta is also subject to negation? There is no way of negating the Atma, because what cannot be negated is the Atma that is neither a doer nor an enjoyer. Anything that is Satya cannot be negated. Abaditam Satyam. The one who negates everything is Atma, and that person is a conscious being who cannot be negated at any time. Anything you are aware of, any object of consciousness, you can keep negating. But what cannot be negated is the one who negates, who is consciousness. It is something like space. You can move anything around in space, but you cannot move space around. Therefore, it is not possible to negate the nature of Atma. The Purva Mimamsaka's argument is that if the sense of agency in Atma can be negated by the Shruti that reveals knowledge of Brahman, then that Shruti also stands negated by the Shruti that enjoins karma for a karta. Then both fail to be means of knowledge pramana, and therefore the Veda loses its pramanya. No, the Shruti that enjoins karma is negated by the Shruti that reveals Brahma Vidya. And that is why Vedanta comes later and karma comes first. It is like every erroneous perception. Will the correct perception come earlier or later? The correcting perception always comes later, after the erroneous perception. The perception that Atma is a karta is first. Everybody has it. Later, the Shruti comes and tells us that it is not a karta. That cannot be negated by the already negated notion that Atma is a karta. Once it has been negated, it cannot come and negate the truth. Once the snake is negated by pointing out that it is a rope, the snake will not come and appear there again. You will not mistake that rope for a snake again. In that example, the same mistake may be committed at a different place and time, but here, place and time do not come into the picture. When does the Atma disappear? How many Atmas have you got? When can you commit the mistake? We cannot say that there is inadequate light because light is Atma. How are you going to miss that Atma? It is not memory based. It does not have a location. It is yourself. It is not dependent upon a time because time is mithya. Nor does it appear in a particular state because all the states are dependent upon the Atma. Therefore, once known, when can you again commit a mistake about Atma? It is not possible. Once the false notion, mithya pratyaya, is understood as false, it stands negated, bhadita, and the truth remains. We have seen that the sentences of the Shruti which reveal the reality of Atma as Brahman cannot be negated by those Shruti sentences that reveal various means for various ends which are not otherwise known to us. There is another thing to be noted about these two different types of Shruti. While the first portion of the Shruti reveals certain ends and the means that can be employed to gain them, in the second portion, the Shruti itself is the means and the end is the very knowledge gained from the words of the Shruti. The knowledge itself is liberation, the end. Why should anybody study the Vedanta Shastra? At least in the first portion of the Veda, you understand what is desirable and what is not desirable, and how to accomplish the varieties of ends. But why should I study the last portion, which is dealing with some reality? We are not interested in reality. We are interested in achieving ends. Therefore, I study Vedanta not just to know something, but also in order to gain freedom, moksha. The value is for moksha, and here knowledge itself is that end. What I am seeking happens to be myself, and therefore the knowledge of myself is itself the end here. And there is no other end proposed after the knowledge. By inquiry into Vedanta or any other Shastra, what do you get? Only knowledge. Because being a pramana, it is meant only for knowledge. The subject matter of Vedanta is the Atma, and the Atma happens to be the Satya, the truth of everything. When I understand this, I understand that I am the whole. So this knowledge itself is an end. It is unlike any other type of knowledge. If at all, there is a knowledge that we can cite as an example, it is like the knowledge of the 10th man who was searching for the 10th man. Himself being the 10th man, he did not count himself. And when he was told, "You are the 10th man," he discovered, "I am the 10th man." Here, knowledge is the end because he is seeking himself. When you seek something that you already have, knowledge is the end in itself. This particular end, unfolded by Vedanta, cannot be negated by the Karma Kanda because the agent, Karta, himself is negated by this knowledge. Therefore, this cannot be further negated. The I notion in the body-mind sense complex gets sublated. Badhyate. That is different from getting destroyed. When something is destroyed, it ceases to exist in that form. But when something is sublated, even though it continues to be there in the same form, you know that it is not true. The I notion in the body, etc., is understood as false. Unless what is false is understood as false, there is no negation, badha. When what is false is understood as false, that is knowledge, jnana. False understood as false is truth. The truth is, it is false. Or we can say that the erroneous conclusion or perception that I is the body-mind-sense complex is negated. How it is negated or sublated? In the wake of knowledge of the Atma. How is it? How that is possible? Because one is true and the other is false. Until that knowledge takes place, the false will masquerade as the real, like any imposter. Until you call the bluff, he passes for what he pretends to be. Once you inquire into who he is, the truth is exposed. Similarly here, until you call the bluff, this I notion in the body, etc., passes as true. Once you have that knowledge of the Atma, it cannot be negated further.
Hari Om. Time you relax. Yeah, you've done well. Once a clear vision of Atma is gained, it cannot be negated by anyone, at any time, in any way. Who is going to negate it? If it has to be negated, there should be another Atma. Because no other Atma is available, it cannot be negated by anyone. Kenachit na bhajyate. Then again, it cannot be negated at any time. Kadachit na bhajyate. Because it is not dependent upon time. Because time is what? Mithya. On the other hand, time has its being in this Atma, which is entirely free from time. Nitya. Atma is Nitya. Time is Mithya, as though it is. How is it going to change at any time? At no time is it possible to negate this knowledge of Atma. Further, it cannot be negated in any way. Katha. Katha. What is this? Kadanchedapi na bhajyate. How are you going to negate it? You require a means of knowledge, pramana, for that. Inference is not going to negate it. Perception is not going to negate it because it is not an object of perception or inference. To negate it, you must have better knowledge of Atma. But the Shruti has already negated everything. Even the means of knowledge, pramana, and the thing to be known, prameya, stand negated by the Shruti. Which pravritti is going to negate this Atma? There is no means of knowledge to employ to gain better knowledge of Atma so that it can be negated. Once I say Atma is pure consciousness, free from any form of limitation, not bound by time or space, and having no particular attribute, how are you going to negate it? You are aware of an attribute, and what you are aware of, you can negate. Every attribute obtains as an object of consciousness. If instead of recognizing the consciousness as Atma, you recognize any one thing that you are conscious of as the Atma, like the body or the mind or the senses, then it can be negated. Why? Because it is anatma. It is perceptible. It is available for perception, anumana, ardhapatti, anupalabdhi, upamana, etc. But Atma is not having any attribute based on which you can use these pramanas to get to know Atma. It is available for your sight. Since that it is available means the body, mind, senses. Since you can objectify every one of them, they are all subject to negation. Then what is left out is that which cannot be negated further. Anything that is negatable is in your consciousness. And this in your consciousness is a kind of a term which we must understand clearly. That your consciousness means what? There is no difference between your consciousness and my consciousness. In consciousness, okay? Negatable in consciousness. And whatever you negate, you hold in your mind. That is what you are negating. Therefore, anything that is negated or subject to negation is within the scope of consciousness alone. But you cannot negate consciousness because the one who has to negate consciousness is that very consciousness. Like earlier paras, Swamiji mentioned what? Surrender. Who has to surrender? Ahankara has to surrender. Ego has to surrender. But the very act of surrendering is done by the ego. How does it do that? It's a matter of knowing. Anything that is negatable is in your consciousness. And whatever you negate, you hold in your mind. That is what you are negating. Therefore, anything that is negated or subject to negation is within the scope of consciousness alone. But you cannot negate consciousness because the one who has to negate consciousness is that very consciousness. It is something like wanting to see your birth or your parents' marriage. How are you going to do that? Similarly, how are you going to negate Atma? Everything else I can negate, but not I, the one who negates. I cannot be negated. Nor can you say, even though I have knowledge, I have not gained moksha. The knowledge is non-separate from the result moksha. And that the result of this knowledge cannot be negated because it is not other than Atma. In terms of result, it cannot be negated because there is no result that improves upon this. There is no other improvement on this. Yam ladva na param labham manyate nadhikam tataha. Yasmin stito na dukkhe na gurunapi vichalyate in the 6th chapter. After having obtained what? There is nothing other than, higher than that to be obtained. That is you. In terms of result, it cannot be negated because there is no result that improves upon this. It is freedom. If you gain freedom from freedom, what do you have? Bondage. If you like, yesterday we have seen when somebody came out of the jail and he was worried about his livelihood, he has refused to be free. He has asked for freedom from freedom and he was jailed again. It is freedom. If you gain freedom from freedom, what do you have? Bondage. Therefore, neither in terms of result can it be negated because it cannot be bettered, nor in terms of knowledge because there's no means of knowledge for it. The Shastra has the last word when it says that you are Brahman. Tat tvam asi. How are you going to improve upon it? Brahman means infinite, limitless, and all knowledge. Okay? There is nothing other than that. Who is going to improve upon it? If it is anything else, it is only going to be less. When you know that fire is Ushnaha, Prakashaha cha, hot and brilliant, how are you going to negate it? It cannot be negated because it is the very nature of the fire. It is a swabhava. Only what is not its nature can be negated. If I give any one attribute to Atma, you can negate that. You can contend with it. But when I say that any attribute that you give to Atma is subject to negation, how are you going to negate it? You cannot. Thus, what remains unnegatable, abadita at all times is Atma alone. You cannot negate this pure consciousness, Atma. The Shruti that reveals this cannot be negated by any other Shruti which enjoins karma. If you think erroneously that Shruti has enjoined karma for you, Shruti is thinking that you are a karta. It is your mithya prachaya. Shruti has never wanted to tell you that you are the karta. It knows you think you are the karta. It is a mithya prachaya. Get out of that is the prabodha of the Shruti. Even though the karma kanda is negated by the jnana kanda, it has its own sphere of validity. Further, just because we say that the Shruti that teaches Brahma Vidya negates the Shruti that enjoins karma, that does not mean that the Brahma Vidya portion of the Shruti has the status of being a means of knowledge, pramana, while the Shruti enjoining karma does not. The negation is only from the standpoint of view of understanding that Atma is not a karta. When that is understood, and it is understood that only Atma is real and everything else, including Shruti, is mithya, the Shruti enjoining karma no longer has any validity. But just because it is negated by the Brahma Vidya Shruti, it does not mean that it has no validity at all. It is like this. Even in the karma section, there is a certain sequence to be followed in doing karma. For example, first you have to undergo upanayana in order to be qualified for marriage, vivaha. And again, the vivaha qualifies you to do a particular ritual called the Vaishwadeva, which in turn qualifies you to perform the Agnihotra. The one who performs the Agnihotra is qualified to perform the Jyotishtoma. And the one who has performed the Jyotishtoma is qualified to perform the various Chaturmasya rituals and so on. It's a kind of a sequential thing. Each one qualifies you to perform the other. And one by one, they are all given up. Once you have done Upanayana, for example, you do not have to do it again. That does not mean that what was said by the Shastra about the sequence of the rituals is not valid. It is just that some of them need not be repeated. Similarly, all the various karmas that you do that are enjoined by the Shruti are supposed to make your mind ready for the knowledge given at the end in the Jnana Kanda. The requisite preparedness of the mind is established through the Karma Kanda Anushtana. Then lastly, what is the real aim of all the karma? As he is doing them, the person also gains Antakarana Shuddhi, and then a desire is born in the mind to know the Ishvara that he is worshipping. He begins to think, what is this Ishvara whom I am worshipping? What is the relationship between me and Ishvara? What is the truth of Ishvara? What is the truth of myself, the world? This desire to know is born because of a religious life. In Shankara's vision, the whole Karma Kanda is meant only to create an interest in the pursuit towards the self, Atma. It is in order to create that pursuit of knowledge of the self that all these karmas are mentioned. And just because one karma is negated, when you do the second karma, the Shruti that talks about the first karma does not cease to be a means of knowledge. It is certainly a means of knowledge for the second karma, certainly. It is as valid as the Shruti that talks about the second karma. It is not valid for the one who has already done the first karma, but it is valid for the one who has not yet done it. Similarly, when the Shruti talks about Atma being Brahman and therefore not a Karta, all the karma is already negated. When it says that immortality cannot be gained by karma or by progeny or by wealth, but by renouncing all these, na karmana, na prajaya, dhanena, chagena, eke, amrutatvam manashuho. Eke, chagena eke, only by chaga, only by renunciation, amrutatvam manashuho. It is not contradicting itself. At a particular stage, it talks about karma, and doing that karma can be led to renouncing all of it. In that sense, it makes you ready. Therefore, a religious life is enjoined for inquiry into Vedanta. Without a religious life, there is no fruitful inquiry into the Vedanta, because it is not simply dry philosophy. Thus, it is in a religious atmosphere alone that Vedanta is studied. You must be like a fruit ready to be plucked and enjoyed. It should not be a simple flower. If you pluck away the flower, what happens? There is no advent of the fruit at all. And you must allow the flower to drop, let the fruit come in the raw stage, and let that raw fruit grow and later on ripen. And finally, when it is pakvam, when it is ready to be eaten, then you enjoy that. Further, when the Shruti reveals that everything other than Brahman is mithya, the karma kanda has already become negated badita. How can you say that it is mithya and at the same time means of knowledge, pramana? Even though it is mithya, still it is a means, an upaya. From the standpoint of view of what is to be accomplished, it is a certain empirical reality. In keeping with the reality of what is to be accomplished, supposing a person is frightened by a snake that he has seen, his friend comes along and realizes that he is mistaking a rope for a snake. What does he do? He brings in a flashlight, an upaya, to reveal the rope. Now the means, the upaya that he had used has not produced anything, nor has it scared away the snake. It only reveals the truth to the ajnani. In revealing the truth, it solves a problem that was based on ignorance. If you are Brahman, free from bondage, etc., then where is moksha? Finally, the Shastra says that there is no seeker, no desire of this knowledge, and no liberation. This is what Gaudapadacharya in the Mandukya Karika has said. Hey, where is all this discussion? Why are you unnecessarily worried about all this Shastra Vakya, Vedanta Vakya, etc.? You are eternally free. There is no bondage at all. There is no effort required. Just be yourself. You are already free. Just know that nothing else needs to be done. You are neither bound nor were you born. This is what the Mandukya Karika says. Finally, the Shastra says that there is no seeker, no desirer of this knowledge, no liberation. This is the truth. If the whole problem is false, mithya, the means for solving it is also mithya. Still, it enjoys a certain empirical reality, which is fine because it leads you to know the reality. Shankara, keeping in mind that he is talking to a Purva Mimamsaka, says that it is like Ardhavadha, statements of fact that are auxiliary to injunctions. Shankara gives him an example that he can easily understand. Even though the Shruti is Mithya, it is still valid because what it reveals is Satya. What a beautiful statement is this. Even though Purvamimamsaka says, if that is so, this is mithya. Okay, even though you consider that as mithya, it is still valid because it leads you to discover what is satya. Even though the Shruti is mithya, it is still valid because what it reveals is satya. The Purvamimamsaka's view is that the entire Veda is meant to make you act and not to reveal an existent fact. If there is any statement of a fact, that statement called Arthavada has to be connected to a main injunction. Otherwise, it is meaningless. Hamnayasya kriyadhatvat anardhakyam atathatanam. For example, in the Veda, it is said that Agni wept tears of silver. In the Veda, Agni wept tears of silver. What do I gain by knowing this fact? The Veda is not literature, it's a scripture, and it has to be meaningful. It is meaningful because from this statement we understand that giving silver in the ritual is prohibited. If you do, you will have reasons to cry. Thus, this statement of fact, Ardhavada, becomes part of the description of how the real is to be done. Iti kartavyata. Similarly, Shankara says that the entire karma kanda can be like Arthavada for the jnana kanda. Even though the means is mithya, it has some reality because of the reality of the end. It is not directly a means of jnana, but it does not lose its status of being a pramana because it is indirectly useful for the main thing. It is valid as it is useful like secular transactions. Even in secular transactions, we use these sorts of means. If we want a child to drink milk, we tell him that his hair will grow if he drinks it. It is true that it is a false statement, but it does the job. We say a lot of things just to make the child do things which are good for him. Similarly, even though it is mithya, the Shastra talks about the karma kanda as though it is a pramana in order to make you do what it says so that you will gain antakarna shuddhi and prepare yourself for the knowledge that makes you free. We follow a mithya means to achieve a real result. To know Brahman, which is real, Satya, we have many upayas, means that are all mithya. Shankara connects the entire karma kanda to Brahma Vidya in this way. See, the fallacy in understanding the Veda is if you understand it in bits and pieces without knowing the entire substance of the and the import of the Veda, what it intends through the Veda Vakyas, what is the purpose of that, what it is a pramana for. If you don't understand that, you are in trouble like the Purva Mimamsaka. It is valid and Purva Mimamsaka because he has never studied the Uttara Kanda. Uttara Kanda is the Jnana Kanda. He is always a Purva Mimamsaka. He is only about the dharma, about the karma, about the karma kanda portion of the Veda only. It is valid for those who have high cognition in the body. Who is this high cognition fellow? an ajnani, people like us, who are trying to graduate to a higher level, but who are still ajnanis, it is valid for for people like us. Then he gives an alternative argument for the karma kanda being a direct means of knowledge, pramana, even though it is mithya. Supposing someone is not ready for moksha, then karma and its results are real for him. In that case, the karma kanda is a direct means of gaining limited ends. Only the knowledge that is generated by the Vedanta Shastra is not subject to negation. It is abhaditam jnanam, and therefore fulfills the definition of means of knowledge, pramana, which we have defined as that which gives rise to knowledge, which is not subject to negation and which is not gained by other means of knowledge. Abhadita, anadhigata, jnana, janakam, pramanam. Abhadita anadhigata jnana janakam. Jnana janakam. It is the father of jnana. Jnana janakam pramanam. That is the praman, means of pramana. Abhadita. It cannot be negated. Anadhigata, not known earlier. Jnana janakam pramanam. All our other means of knowledge, like inference, anumana, etc., do not really give rise to a knowledge, because they always reveal what? An object. An Atma is not an object. It is you, the very subject. When it is you, the very subject, what other pramana will reveal you? That is why they all fail. Only you have to look to Shastra as a pramana. And Shastra means Shastra Vakya. And you keep on rolling that in your mind with that kind of a vritti. And finally, the Brahmakara vritti that is generated in your mind by using the Shastra Vakya with adequate Shraddha, that will only reveal who indeed you are and what kind of a person you are. What is bondage? What is freedom? Who are you? Who is Ishvara? What is Jiva? What is Jagat? What is Brahma? All these things will be revealed, which is not negated. That way, eventually, even the karma kanda is not a pramana, though it talks. Yeah, just I'll stop with the next big para. Though it talks. Hey, where is it? Though it talks what?
Though it talks about means and ends, sadhana sadhya, that we cannot otherwise know about.
I missed the one sentence. Karma kanda is not a pronoun. Yeah. Correct. Not a means of knowledge. Abhadeta anadhigata jnana janakam praman. All our other means of knowledge, like interpret, etc. That way, eventually, even the karma kanda is not a pramana. Though it talks about means and ends, sadhana and sadhya, that we cannot otherwise know about. Those means and ends are negated by knowledge of Brahman. Those means and ends are negated by knowledge of Brahman. When it is revealed that everything is one alone, non-dual Atma, they all become negated, badhita. In its own sphere, in the empirical world, the karma kanda becomes a pramana, giving rise to knowledge of means and ends. These can be used for mental purification, antakarana shuddhi, in order to gain moksha, and thereby the karma kanda becomes useful, even though it is not directly involved in giving rise to moksha. Indirectly, it is useful. Secondly, it can be considered directly useful if we confine ourselves to the sphere of ignorance. If we confine ourselves to the sphere of ignorance, it is always useful if one is satisfied with simple security and pleasure, artha and kama, then the karma kanda is directly a pramana for gaining those limited ends. This is where the purushartha nishchaya is important. The Shruti statements that talk about various karmas are relevant for people who have not yet gained self-knowledge, while previously Shankara argued that they are indirectly valid means of knowledge for gaining moksha. Here he shows how they are directly means of knowledge prior to the gain of knowledge of Atma. It is like perception, which are valid means of knowledge for one who is identified with the body, etc. Only when the body, mind, senses are identified as Atma, do these become pramanas. Otherwise, they are all sublated, badhita pramanas. Even though they continue to operate, they have only empirical reality, not absolute reality. Once one knows the self. Similarly, before the knowledge of the Atma, Karma Kanda has validity as a direct means of knowledge, like perception, etc. Where is this? We do not say that the Karma Kanda has no validity as a means of knowledge, pramana. Only that it has no validity for the person who has gained knowledge of Atma. Even within the Karma Kanda, an injunction is only valid for the person who is qualified to do it. An injunction for a married person has no validity for a brahmachari. Similarly, for the person who is qualified for moksha, or for the person who already knows the nature of Atma, the Karma Kanda has no pramanya, no validity, no usefulness. That's it. I think we'll call it a day here. Okay. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Brahmara, please make a note of this page number and this heading also. Atma is not Karta. Even 472. 472. Atma is not a Karta, even by its mere presence, because all actions take place in its presence. Atma becomes a Karta. Purva Pakshi is subject. This Purva Pakshi, he keeps on hammering at Vedanti. But I'll tell you what, his objections have some kind of a reality, as though it is a Mithya reality, Mithya Prachaya, but there is some substance in his argumentation. All right.
Nanaji,
Everybody.
Nanaji.
Yes, please.
I think we could get a clear picture of what is Veda and what is Vedanta now.
Okay.
Yeah. Veda is Mithya Pratyaya and Vedanta is the ultimate moksha.
Very right, sir.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
That Mithya Prachaya has its usefulness. Like Shankaracharya said, the Karma Kanda has its own usefulness. It will nurture you to become a fit person for the Jnana Kanda. It will render you a prepared person as far as your mind is concerned to be in a position to grasp the Shastra Vakyas which are available in the Jnana Kanda.
Yeah. No, otherwise, until now, we were not understanding what is difference between Veda and Vedanta.
Both are part of the Veda. Both are part of Vedanta. Yeah.
So after Vedanta, there is no knowledge because that is Anta.
Correct.
Knowledge has ended.
Yes.
So good. Jai Gurudev.
Okay, good.
The Purva Pakshi, the very fact that the Purva Pakshi is still a Purva Pakshi is that he's still in work in progress. He still has not got, can we say he still has not got the mumukshutva? Is that why he's still holding on to Karma Kanda?
Not like that. He, like Shankaracharya said, like Swami Dayananda also said in his commentary, this Purva Pakshi is like a sparring partner. Without the sparring partner, you can't improve on your capacity to train. You're a boxer, you got a sparring partner, and you want to defeat the world champion. And you want the sparring partner to improve your skill and things like that. That is how. In order to be in a position to understand cleanly the Veda Vakyas, you require a sparring partner who always, picks up holes in the Veda Vakyas. And those kind of people are very useful. Because of them only, you will have clarity of knowledge. You may think you have some knowledge, but if that knowledge is vague, the clarity of that vague knowledge will be dawning. The clarity will be dawning only by a questioner like the Purvapakshi.
Right.
When
See
he
the
points out this, why not that, etc., then you will have to find out what is the answer. And you will not fight him, but you will very lovingly talk to him. Hey, this is the purpose of the Veda. This is the purpose of the Veda Vakya. If you say what you say is true, then what is the purpose of the Vedanta at all? How do you say Atma ma are? Shrotavyaha, mantavyaha, nidijyachitavyaha. Where is the purpose for all those vakyas? What is the meaning of Tattvamasi? What is the meaning of Aham Brahmasmi? What is all this? What is the proclamation by great rishis of yore who have exclaimed Veda Hametam Purusham Mahantam Aditya Varnam Tamasa Parastat Tamekam Vidwan Amrta He Bhavati. Only by knowing that you will be immortal. When you say that, when you have the Shraddha in their Vakyas, because in their moods of high contemplation, they have proclaimed this. And that should be taken as correct. That should be taken as valid for you to go forward. That's all. Hari Om.
Nanaji, one small
Thank you,
question.
Nana.
Nanaji?
Yeah, all questions tomorrow we will take up, sir. Vijay, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Hari Om.
Hari Om.